From South Carolina Public Radio, this is Walter Edgar's Journal. This week, we will be talking with Nathan Spainhour, author of the South Carolina BBQ Project.
Nathan is a designer and educator whose work explores the relationship between design, place, and cultural narrative.
His book, The South Carolina BBQ Project, began as his MFA thesis in graphic design and has since evolved into an ongoing documentation of barbecue's visual culture, from signage and typography to architecture and everyday ephemera, situated within the broader history of Southern foodways. Nathan, it's great to have you on the show today, especially to talk about your book, The South Carolina BBQ Project, all books have to have a colon.
Of course.
Signs, symbols, and stories from the pit.
Yes.
Well, that is a great title. I can always do without the explanation after the colon, but everybody, as I said, everybody has to have that.
Well,
now,
you see, that's what intrigued me about this book.
Yeah, it is. And then even more so is in your introduction, you said, this started out as a project not in food, but in advertising.
Yes, essentially. Thanks for having me, Walter. This is a really great honor. I love your show. So it was a master's thesis for an MFA in graphic design.
Okay, and where you do that?
It is a program out of Vermont called Vermont College of Fine Art, and I was one of the few Southerners that was in that class.
Where is it located in Vermont?
It was in Montpelier.
Okay, the capital.
Mm-hmm. And now it's kind of dispersed after COVID. You know, they do low residencies. Yeah. So
yeah. Were you there? You probably froze to death.
Oh no, we only went up every 6 months, and I worked with an advisor throughout the time that I was here. So it was a kind of a self-study program type thing.
Well, how did a boy from Anderson, South Carolina decide to go to that program?
Well, at the time I was teaching. I was teaching at a school called Anderson University up in Anderson, go figure. And I was coming in from industry, and so I needed to get a master's, and I looked at a bunch of different institutions, and that's the one that intrigued me mainly because of the size. It was very small, and it was kind of an independent study situation, so I could kind of choose what I wanted to study.
Okay. You came in from business. Mm-hmm. I would have thought you were a very young man looking at you right now. So what business and what were you teaching at Anderson?
So I've been doing design work for about 20 years, I guess a little over that now. And I was a creative director, various agencies up in the Greenville area in the upstate. And in Anderson, I had been working at a startup it was a startup code school. Not worth getting into the explanation there, but I was their creative director and got to know some of the professors at AU because I had some interns, and ended up teaching design at Anderson. So I was teaching web design, I was teaching brand design, and that kind of thing. Okay.
How did your advisors in Vermont take to your subject of barbecue signs?
Well, if I'm honest with you, I was, when I started this process, I was studying the relationship between memory and sense of place.
Okay.
And it's a little broad. And I came back from some project I had been working on, and it was a train trip, long story, and everyone had positive responses. And there was one person, he ended up being my advisor that semester. He's from Raleigh.
Okay.
And he really appreciated the work, but he wanted me to make it more personal. And so that sent me down the road of studying where I'm from. And that eventually led to foodways, which led to barbecue. And he, of course, being from Eastern North Carolina, was very excited about that and encouraged me to move forward.
Okay. Is Anderson, now we have the famous barbecue map of South Carolina.
Yes.
That was done in, I think, 1989. Chuck Kovacic in the geography department at Carolina's a longtime friend of mine. He referred to the 4 regions, and we need to talk about 4 regions.
Yes.
That's very important. Of course, we live here in the Midlands, which is mustard base.
Mm-hmm.
Is Anderson in tomato or, well, you say big tomato and lesser tomato.
Yes.
Chuck said tomato and ketchup, which I think describes it.
Yes.
So you in the ketchup. I couldn't figure out where Anderson fell in the map.
It's honestly on that map. It's a little in between. I believe it's more in the tomato, or the dark or the heavy tomato. And it's, if I'm honest, nowadays, as you know, you can get them. You can get everything everywhere. But yes, that's where it falls.
Yes, that's what some restaurants do today. They produce the pork, and it has no taste.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have 3 or 4 choices of sauces, and you glunk the sauce on, and that's what you're eating is the sauce. But anyway, and we forgot the vinegar and pepper.
Very important.
From the PD.
Okay, now I have to ask this as somebody who loves barbecue. How do you serving barbecue? How do you produce meat that has no taste? I could see it if you perhaps cooked it in a gas or electric oven. But if
Bingo, Alfred.
All right. So you're saying that a lot of places do that.
Particularly places that have gotten commercialized.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Now,
okay.
One thing Nathan did is he basically, for the most part, surveyed old-fashioned South Carolina barbecue joints.
Right.
And I use that term with great respect. It's not
And love,
It's
yes.
not meant to be. And it usually was a mom and pop or a family operation. And the old-fashioned ones generally were only open Friday and Saturday, or sometimes Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. They didn't really have buffet lines and a few sides, but those, particularly in the PD, tended to be whole hog.
Yes.
Cooked over slow and low heat, which, as you point out, thank you for being a historian, goes back to the Native Americans in the 16th century. The Spaniards brought pigs to South Carolina, and they brought peaches too. So there's 2 great things that they
I didn't
they brought.
realize that. Okay.
But the Native Americans, when the Spaniards got here, they were already cooking meat over a low flame. I mean, there are pictographs, drawings of that, usually fish, maybe deer. But once the Spaniards brought pigs and they went loose, wild, we South Carolinians put 1 and 1 together and we got 2. Mm-hmm. So you could cook pigs low and slow. But back to your earlier comment, Alfred, if you do not use wood, if you cook it in gas,
I know.
It just doesn't have much taste.
Yeah, it's the wood that flavors it. I mean, I think that's the thing. It's and the type of wood makes a difference. Mm-hmm. And in different parts of the state, you'll have different flavors because of the wood that's there. So
yeah, and some places would specifically advertise hickory smoked barbecue. There are a couple of folks, a couple of places you mentioned, like pecan. Mm-hmm. And again, it depends upon the wood supply. Now, that's one of the things that's different, and you explore this. In the old days, let's say into the last century, growing up in the South in the 1940s and 50s, you could get a pig just about anywhere at the local market. Now, it's not so easy to obtain pigs for cooking, and most of them are coming out of these industrialized places, great many of them located in North Carolina.
Yes.
Surrounded by lagoons of pig manure, liquid pig manure. You can smell them before you get to them.
Yes. It's a sad story, and I think that it was fascinating when I was studying that. Believe it or not, I ended up I couldn't eat pork for a few months after seeing all the imagery. But it seems like South Carolina maybe have learned a lesson or 2 from North Carolina with that. And I know that it's popular now to really pay attention. It's kind of, the farm to table movement has influenced that, but it's popular now to pay attention to where the pigs are coming from. And I know, at least up where I am, there's a heritage pig farm that's nearby that we have a barbecue joint called Circle M Barbecue that does PD style barbecue in the upstate, and they get all their hogs from up the road. So,
and the folks at Historic Brattonville have reintroduced the pig, I guess, species that the Spaniards introduced the 16th century.
It's amazing.
They're kind of tough, but
is that the Ossabal? Is that
I can't remember. They're not all that big.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but of course we've got pigs running wild in South Carolina.
Yes.
So anyway, you decided on this topic. Then you began your research. Really
tough research.
Oh gosh, it must have been. Now we probably need to let folks know, and we do have listeners literally around the country. When we talk about barbecue, I was reared, and I know you were. Barbecue is a noun. It is not the cooking. My British friends talk about they're going to do a barbecue. Well, they talk about having this little grill and slapping something on it, and it's just not. That's not what it is. You and I both have been privileged to be at an old-fashioned whole hog event that goes all night. And why don't you describe one of that for us?
Well, I think that it's interesting. One of the things I find fascinating about the technique of actually smoking a whole hog is how laborious it is. And I think Ryan Fertile is an author that I interviewed, and he wrote a book called, oh my goodness, I can't remember the name of it. I'll remember it later.
Hey, since I have your book here, and I know you have a good Ryan Fertile, The One True Barbecue, Fire, Smoke, and the Pit Masters Who Cook the Whole Hog.
Perfect. That's exactly right. That book is wonderful. And when I was talking to him, he used a phrase that I thought was great. And he said, it's all open source, meaning like these pit masters will tell you everything they do, and how they smoke the hog, all the different levels of temperature and all that kind of stuff, because they know it's so difficult and so laborious that no one else is going to steal it from them because no one wants to do it. But essentially, these folks will, especially if you're only open on the weekends, I think Rodney Scott specifically, when he was at Scott's Barbecue in Hemingway, he would stay through the night on Thursday night, start at midnight, light the fires, get the coals out of that, put them under the pigs, and I think they had to do it every hour or so to stoke the flames to make sure that the hogs stay at a certain temperature. And you have to watch it. Like, you can't go to sleep. You have to stay there with them the whole night. And then 12 hours later or so, they flip them. And then I think at that particular pit, they put a mop sauce on it, the vinegar pepper mop sauce. And it's spicy. And that's when they let that simmer. And when it's done, it's mixed together and they serve it. But it's an all-night affair, and it's hard work. And when there's a reason when they run out, they can't just make more,
Well, I told you before we got on there, I am a certified barbecue judge, the South Carolina Barbecue Association certification, and I judged around the state up until about 2007. And I can remember going to judge a contest down in Rembert, South Carolina, and it was whole hog, and they'd been up all night, and it was raining. It was just it was horrible, and we were sitting there waiting to get our samples for the judging, and this one group had finished, and they were moving it to a table, and they slipped, and the hog went into the mud.
Oh no!
And have you ever seen good old boy, cry? It was horrible. They couldn't enter it into the contest.
Oh my goodness.
It was heartbreaking. In the way we used to judge, we would have something the size of a placemat and squares, and you would have, if there were 8 or 10, whatever, you just have a dot of the barbecue about the size of a 50-cent piece. and you taste, and you have saltine crackers. You taste one, you drink a little bit of water, you take saltine to cleanse your palate, and that's the way you judge the barbecue.
One bite.
So, and I was even at a barbecue over in Kingstree. I'm sorry, Indian land, and I was staying with a friend, and the barbecue that was judged the best was not the PD barbecue. It was a mustard base.
Ooh.
And the guy I was staying with said, "I'm not telling anybody you living in my house." And the reason was what people do now. They think the hotter the better. And they had put so much pepper into the barbecue, it literally burned your tongue. You couldn't taste anything.
Now, that's not the winter you're talking about there.
No.
Okay.
That was why the mustard based, and actually it was a very thin vinegary mustard based. It was very, very good.
Oh wow!
But anyway, that was a while back. I think that was about 2004.
Okay.
2005. But as I said, to come up with a mustard-based barbecue winning something in the PD was dangerous.
Well, that's a big deal. I know this year, Southern Living had their People's Reader's Choice Award, and this is the first year or maybe, I don't know if it's the first year, but it was a big deal. But the South Carolina Reader's Choice Award was Lewis Barbecue, which does Texas barbecue. It's brisket, which that was a big deal, and I think it's an interesting testament to how times change things.
That's heresy. I'm sorry. In South Carolina, I mean, I like brisket, but I'm sorry, barbecue is pork.
I agree.
Okay, well, I could launch into a course of the times they are changing, but let me ask you, where is Lewis's place?
He has his first one was in Charleston, and now he has in South Carolina. He has a second location in Greenville, and I think Raleigh and Atlanta now.
Mm-hmm. Well, he moved into Charleston from Texas to compete with Scott.
Well, that explains the brisket then, doesn't it?
Yes. Very, very famous in Austin. Yeah.
Well, and Nathan, you dismiss chicken as barbecue, although a lot of folks do that. And actually, as part of our training as a barbecue judge was to judge chicken.
Okay.
So we're going to talk a little bit about the food, and that is the sides.
Oh, yes.
The sides, which we unofficially did because what are the Holy Trinity? Tell our listeners what the Holy Trinity is.
The Holy Trinity of South Carolina barbecue sides are coleslaw, baked beans, and potato salad. Yeah. It's kind of like if you go anywhere, it's going to at least have those.
We kind of unofficially judge the slaw. Now, beyond the Holy Trinity, there is the Pope.
Yes.
And what's the Pope?
The Pope is hash.
Yeah. He looked at me like I had to. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Although now there are some places that make hash so differently than anything I've encountered before. It's more like Brunswick stew.
Yes.
You'll find that particularly in the Savannah River area. Mm-hmm. Folks in Georgia like Brunswick stew. Mm-hmm. And I keep telling my friends in Savannah that, we're having Brunswick stew. I said, is it made with squirrel? And they blanch. And I said, Brunswick stew was originally made with squirrel. Mm-hmm. And having eaten squirrel as a young man, I don't recommend it, but
tastes like chicken.
It ain't very tasty.
Well, wait a minute now. When I shot my first squirrel and my dad made it for me, he did a good job. It tasted pretty good.
Well, that was mine. When my dad took me out with the .22, and his rule was, if you shoot it, you got to eat it.
Yeah,
and we had squirrel for breakfast with gravy and grits.
Exactly.
Wow. but they're kind of chewy.
Yes.
I would imagine gamey, maybe.
A little bit.
Sure.
Yeah.
So anyway, we digress.
We do.
So we've talked about the Holy Trinity and the Pope, but then you go to a lot of places, particularly the restaurants that are open all the time, and you've got collards, you've got fried okra.
Yes.
I mean, you name it.
Sweet potato souffle. Yeah, all sorts of things.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, of all those sides, the one thing that I would never turn down would be fried okra.
Never. I always order it. Anytime it's anywhere, I'll get it.
Well, and when I'm served collards in July, I want to, what do you think you're really giving me? They sure as heck aren't fresh collards in July.
No, they're not.
Nope.
They're not.
I mean, they think anything green can be passed off as collards. I swear in one place that I will not mention,
They didn't give you kale, did they?
that's you. You got it.
I was afraid of that. I'm sorry.
And they tried to call it collards?
They just said greens.
I see.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, if you go into a southern restaurant, you say greens. It's at least supposed to be turnips.
Yes.
Or maybe mustard greens.
Well, you would know mustard the minute you tasted
Oh,
them.
sure. Yeah.
That's true.
Anyway, but let's get back to the signs, because that's what brought you into it in the first place.
And I have to tell you, just looking at the book is so colorful because of all the signage that you photographed, all the illustrations of various store fronts that people have. It really, and along with the stories and the history, it's just a great visual feast there.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
It's it was a lot of fun. Honestly, I think the premise, like the premise, the thing that started the idea was, being someone in the design industry or the advertising industry, I kind of hold that in high regard. And when you think about specifically barbecue joints, and you think about which ones would you consider having the better barbecue? If you put two next to each other, and there was one that was like on Main Street that had a really fancy signage and super professional and super consistent and everything it was putting out there, and then the other one would be a dilapidated shack on the side of the road with like hand painted signs and 5 different logos. Most people would choose the dilapidated shack as the one that would have the better food. And that fascinated me, having my background. And I was like, I wonder what that's about. And that was kind of one of the questions I had going into this. And so that kind of sent me down this path of traveling around the state and observing and documenting, the signage and the experience.
Okay, and of course, sometimes they use the pig. I mean, obviously, but then, for example, Scott's Barbecue just said barbecue.
It did. And now, I think the Rodney Scott's, it just says whole hog barbecue, I believe. Yeah, on the sign.
Yeah. So, let's talk about some of your favorite signs. The one in Columbia, you said, looks like it belonged on the Las Vegas Strip.
Oh, the Piggy Park. Yes, it was. I compared it to some signage from Las Vegas because it's, I think it was fascinating when I first saw it. It literally took my breath away. And it's amazing that something like that can do it. But I guess that's the whole reason it exists, So it's like a beacon coming up over the horizon.
Is that the original restaurant or the?
This is the one in West Columbia.
Yes, the old one. Yeah.
Yeah, with Little Joe, a pig, at the top.
At the very top.
Yeah.
At the top. And, of course, the Joe comes from the founding father of that.
Yes.
But you've got upstate, some of the smaller restaurants have a pig image. And let's talk about those.
The pig images in the upstate. Yeah, you have all sorts of them. I mean, I think one of my favorites is the old Little Pigs, the old chain. They have a dancing cook. It's a dancing pig that has a chef's hat on with like a spatula and a fork. And, when I was looking at all these, I did this whole, exercise where I pulled all the logos specifically from the upstate because doing the whole state would have just been a gargantuan job. Still plan on doing it though, where I subdivided all the categories of logos, and I had, you have the pigs and no pigs, and then within the pig category, you can divide it into, pigs that are just like butcher diagram pigs, and then the other half is pigs that look like people, and then within that category, you've got the people pigs, and then the other half is like pigs that are like chefs, and so it, using logic, they would be cannibal pigs because
right.
they're cooking pork. So I think those are the ones that really make me laugh when I see them.
Well, you mentioned the chain, and let's not tell people this is a huge thing. It's like, 3 or 4 restaurants?
Oh, yeah. It's not. You're good point.
Well, and there's several restaurants that have 6-foot tall pig, I would say mannequins or whatever.
Bucky's Barbecue in Greenville has one in their main restaurant, and he's about my height.
And he's standing on his tiptoes.
Yes. Yes, he is. He is in their main dining room, and nowadays I know they've probably had that thing for years, but nowadays it's the perfect area that people can go and take their picture and put it on social media. So in some ways it's a back around to marketing again, right? But yeah, those are fun. The that particular one, and I really enjoy. I think I have a large picture of it somewhere.
Well, one of the things that has happened in South Carolina, at least just from my being here for the last 50 years, and the barbecue joints like McCabe's in Manning, which is still one of my favorites. Mm-hmm. I made not the mistake, but years ago we had a program on barbecue, and I said I would do anything for 5 pounds of McCabe's barbecue. Well, about 2 weeks later, I had a phone call, and there's this sweet little old lady voice and said, "Now, Professor, are you a man of your word?" I said, "Well, yes, ma'am." She said, she had 5 pounds of barbecue if I drove to Manning to speak to her garden club.
Wow.
And you did.
And I did.
That's amazing. So now people know.
Now people know. I no longer make that bet. But that was, and I have friends from Hemingway, and of course Scott's is the place.
Yes.
And I said, "I'm sorry, fellas, I've done both. McCabe still is a family barbecue joint, and it's in an old filling station."
It's amazing. I haven't made my way to McCabe yet. McCabe Barbecue. I was looking at it this morning because I was trying to figure out if I could. How far is it, from Columbia while I'm down here? But it's on the list for sure. I've heard so much about it.
Okay. All right. As you dealt with these folks, how did the various restaurateurs react to what you were doing? Well,
it's funny. I'm glad you asked. In the initial research, I tried when I was writing the case studies, I was trying to do it from a purely observational perspective, and I intentionally did not, didn't really get to know the pitmasters or anything like that because as you know, when you start to get to know people, it changes your entire perspective of things. And I was really trying to just experience it like anyone would. So the case studies that are in the book are from that perspective. But since then, I've gotten to know a few of them because now I feel like I can go have conversations, and it's actually been a real joy. The folks that are on the cover, that's a place called Mike and Jeff's, and it's in neighborhood in Greenville, and Jeff owns the place, and his daughter is at the front counter, and his mom is the main server. And when he found out that they had been put on the cover, they got so excited, and it made me feel really good. And you can walk in there now, and they have like the map and the book, and it's really bad. But Henry's has been wonderful too. They're one of the case studies. Tiger was really gracious, but it seems overall to be a pretty positive sentiment. which has been great.
Well, your next to last chapter is about barbecue goes upscale, and it's in Charleston.
Yes.
It's become very chic, and this is where you've got the Scott and the Lewis competition. I guess that's fine, but I'm sorry, I like the old-fashioned place myself. You're agreeing.
I agree with you. Yeah, I have found that to be true, for myself as well. I think that, it's understanding where things come from, and it's understanding how things came to be. And I've talked recently a lot about kind of where you can kind of see barbecue going, and embracing other types is a big deal. Like when it comes to, say, brisket or Lewis, but I think what I really find interesting specifically with newer barbecue joints is when the pitmaster really understands and seems to understand, where this idea came from and where these recipes came from, and then they want to put their own twist on it, but they do it with respect to what came before. And I think that's a good example. That would be City Limits, Robbie Robinson over in West Columbia. And I think that's a really wonderful example of something new that feels like it could go into the future and create not only new fans of South Carolina barbecue, but also create fans of old South Carolina barbecue through the new. So I think there's something to be celebrated about that. But I agree with you. Like I was probably one of those people where I knew about the newer places like a Lewis or a Scott's or Rodney Scott's, and growing to know about them, I ended up finding out more about historical places. And
okay. All right, now Mike and Jeff's is a family place. So is McCabe's, which has gone through at least another generation. But one of the sad stories about barbecue is when the pitmaster dies or retires, like Heights Barbecue in Batesville,
and
Batesburg.
I'm sorry, we need a moment of silence over that, because I live near Batesburg, Leesville. I live just outside Gilbert, and I was talking to a young man the other day who's a senior at Clemson. He was back home for Mother's Day, and I said something about good barbecue and mentioned Jackie Heights, and he just sighed and said, "It makes me so sad." And it made me sad too when Mr. Height died, and there was no one to pick up the mantle, and it sort of surprised me. I would have thought it was the kind of tradition that a parent would hang down to children, and they would pick it up and carry it forward as far as foodways.
But Alfred, remember what Nathan said in the beginning. It is not an easy business.
No, it's not. You got to be all in.
Yes, I think that
it's probably the key.
That's what it seems like with those situations. It's always it's nice to see when people do pick it up. I think an example like Henry's Barbecue in Greenville, Tiger O'Rourke, he'd worked there since I think he was in college or maybe before, and he ended up taking it over from the original owner. And they're not family, but he's almost family. He probably spent enough time there. So I think there are other ways that it can happen as well, But I like it. It's nice to see it still happen.
Okay. Well, Nathan, what are you doing when you're not judging barbecue?
I teach, not full-time. I'm an adjunct up at Furman now, and I also run a creative studio up in Greenville, so I do client work and my own work.
Okay. One thing we did not touch, and this is very important too. How do you spell barbecue? I know how you prefer, but...
Well...
I spell it with a Q, Q-U-E. You like the C-U-E.
I like the C-U-E. At the time I wrote this, it was an academic work, and I'm putting it in air quotes. And I thought the C-U-E was a little more broad. And, now if I did it all over again, I'd probably go with the Q.
Well, I mean, there years ago, their main event at the state fairgrounds was the Q, period, the Q. But also how restaurants spell it. Bar dash B dash, sometimes just a Q, which, by the way, the original Scots in Hemingway, that's the way they did it.
The barbecue. And and sometimes you see the QUE at the end of that too. Yeah, there's variations of that. And I think that's one of the more fascinating stories around about how that kind of came to be. And
Well, how did it come to be?
well, I mean, I think it's just like the history. I think there's various rationales for it, but one that intrigues me is the real practical, like when you were advertising in a newspaper, say in the 50s, and you had to pay per letter, of what your advertisement was, and so and I got that from Robert Moss. He's a local historian on the subject, and he was. It's like it gets more expensive the more letters you have. So people started shortening it to BBQ, B-B-Q.
Also, in a column of a newspaper, you can get barbecue. If you spell it out, you're going to have 2 columns.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. The line break. I think, but that's the going, what people think. And nowadays, I think BBQ is just as popular as anything. It's at least if you look at online searches and things like that.
Well, I think it's amazing that in Greenville now, which has gotten to be a very sophisticated eating town,
yes,
it's that there's more than one really good barbecue place. Now they're a little bit upscale.
Yes, some, yes. The ones people seem to, that recognize. But it was interesting starting this process being from the upstate. I think I mentioned in there, it's like growing up, I didn't have a huge relationship with barbecue. And I think, if I'd grown up in Columbia, it might be a different story. But I think it's just because the upstate never had a real strong barbecue presence, probably not until since the early 2000s,
Well, the heavy ketchup, the heavy tomato, which is tomato sauce, kind of seeped across the border from North Carolina, down from Shelby. One of the first shows we had on the Journal was talking about barbecue, and we had call-ins in those days, and somebody called in about this place in North Carolina, and being very chauvinistic, I just said, "I'm sorry. I went to Davidson College. I had that local barbecue. It's like chewing a bowl of cotton. The more you chewed it, it was harder to swallow." We darn near melted the switchboard
I bet you did.
Then we found out we had a lot of listeners in North Carolina.
Oh, wow.
Well, you did anyway.
So we don't do things. One of the lessons learned by somebody who was just a neophyte at that time in broadcasting.
That's fantastic.
Well, we really have to start wrapping it up, although there's one thing I want to ask. You were talking earlier about the preference for the store that has the really consistent, nice, modern signage versus the store that's maybe around the block off the main thoroughfare, and it's got things that, maybe unmatched art from different times that's still hanging up, stuff like that. It just reminded me of something I think John T. Edge once said when he was on the show from the Southern Foodways Alliance. He talked about how the parking lot was paved. Ooh. As an indication of whether or not he thought it might be a good place.
Oh, that's fantastic.
If it was a really smooth asphalt with lines painted, he might not go in there. But if it was gravel and red clay or something like that, he goes, I think I'm going to stop.
And a couple of sinkholes.
And a couple of sinkholes, yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful.
That's just a thought.
I'll add that to the list. I always say it's like, what are things you look for? You look for a pile of wood, right? You look for smoke coming out the chimney, and then now you look at the parking lot.
Yeah.
Well, and the restaurant with the big Las Vegas style sign still cooks with wood.
They do.
Yeah, they do.
They do.
Yeah.
So
more power to them.
Yeah. And actually, when we had John T. Edge on the show, we were talking about pimento burgers. And, of course, the pimento burger originated here in Columbia at the old Dairy Bar.
Right.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Behind the Capitol, wasn't it?
Yeah, behind the Capitol.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Nathan, he is giving us the wind-up sign. Any last words you'd like to add?
I think that it's been a wonderful journey going through and talking about this book, I've met a lot of really interesting people, and it's nice to know that there is such a love for a foodway, that's so old, obviously still has a lot of energy, and I'm looking forward to see how it changes in the future. But yeah, long live barbecue.
Okay. Well, Nathan, it's great to have you on the show, and this has been fun.
It has been. Thanks so much for having me.
I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Nathan Spainhour. I know that I did. His book, The South Carolina BBQ Project, is a lot of fun. Part history, part design study, and part love letter to the state's most treasured foodway. The book explores the culture of barbecue across the Palmetto State.
Walter Edgar's Journal is a production of South Carolina Public Radio. I'm Alfred Turner, and I produce the show, which is made possible by listener contributions to the ETV Endowment of South Carolina. Remember, the views and opinions expressed on Walter Edgar's Journal are not necessarily those of South Carolina Public Radio or its underwriters.
Many of the books discussed on Walter Edgar's Journal can be found as part of the Walter Edgar's Journal Book Nook section at all good books in Columbia, South Carolina, or may be available from your local bookstore. We'll talk again soon.